Biohazard warning. Entering contaminated zone. Transmissions jammed. Proximity coverage only. Backup activated. System rebooted.
What's going on, agents? Your boy Sly here, and welcome back to another Division video. So I wanted to make a video on something that is at the top of everyone's mind, and that is simply toughness. Now, I answer all sorts of questions on Twitter, everything from how do I get better gear, is the underground worth it, all the way up to how do I get 800,000 toughness. While I answer each one the best I can, there is a common misconception that all-out toughness is the only way to play this game. And that, my friends, is completely false. The best way to play this game, honestly, is however you and your friends can get past bosses, challenges, whatever. That's the best way to play this game. There's a misconception that in order to be good at the Division, or be good anything above like a hard level incursion, you need to be max toughness, and you'll also be judged on how high your toughness is, and that's just not the case, guys. Now, maybe if you run a Tactician build with the appropriate gear sets, then yes, go all out toughness and let your skills pick up the slack. But don't think that your measly 400k toughness isn't good enough for a challenge incursion, because it totally is. So in this video, I want to answer one of the biggest questions I receive on Twitter, and that is simply this: how can I achieve max toughness? First of all, guys, that question is wrong. Max toughness will do you no good if you cannot defend yourself. Have you ever heard the saying, the best defense is a strong offense? Well, this totally rings true in the Division as well. Most guides I make are not for high-end players or people that can already beat challenge incursions. Because if you could, why are you watching a guide? And with that being said, one of the problems with going all-out toughness in a group that doesn't have any kind of electronics build players in it is that you have no stopping power. I can get my toughness all the way up to about 550k without really re-rolling anything or looking for the best mods. And unless I'm going into the north end of the DZ or a challenge incursion, I usually leave it around 300 to 350, depending on what kind of build I'm running. So why do I leave it so low if I can reach 550? Plain and simple, guys, DPS. The biggest problem is not being able to have the amount of DPS needed to stop getting overwhelmed. Toughness doesn't count for shit if you're getting shot by 12 level 34s at once, and in order to take them on, you need to be able to thin out the enemies in a fairly decent amount of time. If not, then of course you're going to be overrun, and no amount of toughness is going to save you from that. As a rule of thumb, guys, you can participate in just about anything the Division has to offer with a toughness of about 350 as long as your DPS is 200 and above. If you have good enough gear to make it to 600k while keeping 200,000 DPS, then by all means, guys, rock the hell out of it. But most players in the Division can't achieve that yet, and there is absolutely nothing wrong with that. I once knew a group of guys that had crazy amounts of toughness. I mean, some of the highest I've personally seen. And on the flip side of that, some of the lowest DPS I've also seen. One of them had DPS as low as 105,000, and they were asking me for advice on why they couldn't stay alive. It's not that you can't stay alive, it's more than likely you're not killing enough NPCs and they're simply overwhelming you. Remember back in the first update with Strikers? One player back then with full Strikers proccing could produce more DPS than their entire team. This is the problem with the meta right now, guys. Everyone is so hung up on toughness that people are forgetting the other side of the coin. So if some of you out there are having problems, start back to square one and try something new. I promise you that, at least for me, and this is my opinion, guys, anything over 500,000 toughness is a waste. And I personally couldn't tell the difference between having 650k toughness and 500k. But as I sat there putting 3 clips into a level 35 veteran, which are the purple bars, I can tell you where I did feel the difference, and that was damage output. These high toughness, low DPS setups are meant to be run by one specific type of build, and that is the Tactician. That calls for Tactician's authority. That calls for Tactician's authority and a team doing a lot of damage consistently. That triggers the talent on the gear set, which allows the Tactician to use Pulse and Smart Cover to generate tons of DPS. It's the best of both worlds. But if you don't have that build, you're simply shooting yourself in the foot. So here's my recommendation when starting over, guys. First, think about what's killing you. Easy answer, right? It's usually shotgunners. Level 33 and above, mostly yellow bar elites. Any agent, and I don't care how high his or her toughness is, can only take a few direct hits from a level 34 elite shotgunner before going down. That's just how the division is. The key is to take them out before they get close enough to do any real damage, and to do that you need DPS, plain and simple. Luckily, there is a way to be tough and still have plenty of DPS left over, and that is to use skills and talents in a smart way. So for those that take this advice, try roaming around and finding some specific gear pieces. If you don't have them already, try and find 2 pieces of final measure: chest, holster, or knee pads. The chest is a must, but try to find any other piece that you can. Of course, you want to try and find one that has a high armor rating with armor as an added attribute, and depending on the gear score, look for one that is at the upper end of the stat range for firearms or stamina. It's a lot to ask for, so just try to look for the best that you can find. Then try to roll protection from elites. This is a stat which solves a bunch of problems. Bosses, LMG guys, shotgunners, all those reasons you were looking for toughness in the first place pretty much boils down to elites being too overpowered, and this is a great solution. Now it only rolls on chest pieces and 2 other armor pieces, so stack them up as much as you can and recalibrate if you need to. Once that is set up, start looking for armor mods that give you extra armor or protection from elites. Once it is all said and done, you will have 50% exotic damage resilience, close to maxing out armor if you found decent gear sets, and almost a third less damage from any yellow barred enemy. If you aren't looking to use another specific gear set, then throw on 1 more piece of final measure for 3 pieces in total, and follow the same guidelines as I said before: high stats, high armor, protection from elites, and when you equip that 3rd piece, you will gain an additional 15% protection from elites, in addition to the 32% possible you've had before. That's 47% damage reduction, guys, almost half. And even if you don't quite get there yet because you got shafted with recalibration, anything above 15% is a night and day difference. And the best thing is, you can actually take enemies down now and take them down fast. Once you start taking out enemies a lot faster, you're going to notice that overall, you don't take as much damage as you used to. And the best part is shotgunners can be taken out way before they even become a threat. Now everyone has their own playstyle. Some love cover shooters and others go all Call of Duty. No matter what game they play, they run right up the middle and wonder why they get killed in a game like The Division. The Division is a cover shooter for a reason, and just reading talents and skills should give you the hints that they want you to shoot out of cover. So first things first, if you can help it guys, always shoot out of cover and take your time. Unless there's a countdown, it is not a race. You will also run into less ammo problems having higher DPS, as your bullets will do twice the amount of damage from what they used to. Now, as for your other 4 pieces of gear, after you found your 2-piece final measure, that is completely your call. I personally love the 1st generation gear sets. Striker, Sentry, Tacticians, it doesn't get much better than that. But hey, even Lone Star is good, guys, and it's readily available. You can always keep shooting and saving that reload time. It's actually an increase in DPS. Like I said, easy to obtain, so if you're stuck deciding, pick up some Lone Star and use that until you find your dream set. Also guys, on an end note, the Division endgame enemies are just plain tough. Massive has the old school notion of difficulty. You want to make it harder? Just give the enemies more health. Also, the scaling is completely off as well. Gear sets at 214 that drop at the high end of the stat range are only 18 points away from 268 gear sets that drop at the low end. On top of that, we are all still level 30s, and even though we have 229 weapons these days, they too drop with a certain range. 204s can be more powerful than 229s, and while we've been able to withstand more punishment with each update, our damage output has raised very little, while NPCs are basically doubling their strength every time we get an update. Besides, y'all, the north end of the Dark Zone is meant to be insanely hard. It's where the best loot in the game is, and more so than that, a successful DZ run of just a few hours can give you more gear than playing legit incursions for weeks straight. While it's a little too hard right now, I know that it's never meant to be easy. Alright agents, that's it guys. Now I've been seeing that question about toughness pretty much every day since the inception of Toughness, and with popular streamers running Tacticians, and then after hours and hours of playing the game, they get the best gear possible. And that pretty much shows false expectations. So like I said earlier, low DPS all Toughness build is only meant to be run by a tactician or at least in a team with skill-based players in there, so you can use pulse and smart cover to increase your damage output. If you're not running that, don't go all-out toughness and leave yourself DPS-less. Believe it or not, dramatically increasing your DPS will do wonders for you. It will create more breathing room, it will space out the gunfire, and in the end, you will actually take less damage even though you have less toughness. Try my recommendation of Final Measure and Protection from Elites and shoot for a build with at least 350k toughness while keeping at least 200k DPS. If you can get to 350k toughness and 250 DPS, that would be ideal, but you're going to need high-end gear for that. Also, make sure you're hitting on or at least close to the armor cap. That's also a big one. Once you get the hang of that and you start going into higher challenge activities, you will be surprised what Protection of Elites can really do for you, and Final Measure is a godsend in Dragon's Nest. This simple trick will keep you protected from the things that hurt the most while still allowing you the ability to buy back. The DZ, well, as you can see, y'all, that is another story entirely. Even with 550 toughness, I still get 2-shot by shotguns, but I'm a firm believer of DPS. Good luck, agents, and as always, if you need help, feel free to ask in the comments. The community is totally more knowledgeable than I am, or you can hit me up on Twitter. It might take a while, but I will get back with you. Alright guys, as usual, thank you all so much for watching, and I hope this helps all of you out there who are stuck on this question about toughness. If you want to stay up to date on everything The Division, Destiny, or new uploads from my channel, follow me on Twitter at SlyNation. It is the best place to find out about everything upcoming in the gaming world, as well as new uploads from my channel. Alright guys, couldn't do this without you, and until next time, this is your boy Sly. Done, gone, out.
Okay, Agent, I'm impressed. Like I'm gonna be too busy.